Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for your patience. Welcome to the What's New in iFIX 5.5 webinar. As I said earlier, my name is Carrie Janton. I'm the Marketing Coordinator at Advantage Industrial Automation. Today's webinar will be led by Prasad Pai, who is a GE Global Project Manager. If you have questions along the way, please submit them in the questions box on the right side of the page. I'll try to get them to Prasad quickly. Otherwise, if you can hold your questions till the end, that would probably be ideal. Thanks so much. And Prasad, if you're ready, the floor is yours.
Okay, thanks, Carrie, and good morning, everyone. This is Prasad Pai. As Carrie introduced, I'm the Global Product Manager for iFIX. I also handle batch and drivers for GE Intelligent Platforms. I'm based out of the Foxborough office here in Massachusetts. So what I'm going to present today, and it's going to be some part of slides and some part of some of the features that I can show you on my machine. So basically talk about iFIX 5.5, which we released in the middle of January this year. So what I'll do is just quickly go into the key themes for this release. So from a release standpoint, we were focused on operator consistency and productivity, how we can bring more productivity to developers by certain tools that we put in. Information mobility, and this goes to our web space solution and some enhancements we did in web space. Then there was a quality initiative as part of 5.5 and the focus around performance and reliability of iFIX. And there were some basic voice of customer features in there as relates to Office 2010 or SQL 2010 native driver support that were part of iFIX 5.5. So quick at a glance, if you look at features, and I'll go into details as I get into slides, but we have in iFIX 5.5 brings along the iFIX script integration into our proxy workflow product, and I'll talk about how that is useful and how customers can use that. There are enhancements to our new chart object in terms of additional functionality and some of the functionality that customers have been asking us for since we introduced the new chart object. From a developer productivity perspective, iFIX is now a universal component host. The water industry dynamos that we had introduced as a solutions pack and the OMAC compliant packaging dynamos, the OMAC state model dynamos that we introduced as our OEM solutions pack are part of iFIX 5.5 now. And then there are a bunch of web space enhancements with an iPad client that is up on iTunes that you can download and connect to web space 5.5 as well. So diving into the first theme, which is our operator consistency and productivity theme, the first key feature which we introduced as part of 5.5 was our integration into our proxy workflow product. So this integration is actually in the VBA environment of iFIX. So we have added in certain VBA methods and properties that now would let customers initiate workflows or basically interact with the workflow engine more from a standpoint of an SOP engine, if you look at it from a SCADA operator standpoint from within iFIX. So, if you look at workflow more as a standard operating procedure engine, which becomes part of day-to-day operations, there are just so many different tasks that each operator performs. Now, from a water operator standpoint, he could perform lockout tagouts, he could perform simple tasks as putting certain signals off scan or inhibiting certain alarms, or even there are a certain set of operations or a certain set of tasks that an operator has to do if he sees an intrusion alarm on a pump station or a reservoir. All of these are procedures that most trained operators know by default, since they have been operating on their central SCADAs for a long time. But as there's a churn of operators through field operators coming into the control room and control room operators moving out into the field, it's a constant challenge of how operators can be up to date with that kind of information. Or if you look at a manufacturing operator, there are just different checks and balances he has to do as he starts a batch or as he requires to do manual addition into his batch process that is going on. All of these today, up until say iFIX 5.0, or even based on the preference of the customer, a lot of it is scripted in VBA, or there are external programs that run and do these checks and balances. The POPs workflow provides a graphical interface, a flowchart-like interface where you can use that more as an SOP engine tied to the iFIX SCADA. So for these tasks, the operator does not have to go out of his graphics environment and go into a different software as such. This logic engine of checks and balances can run in the background, and with this integration, the SCADA operator can basically interface with workflow and use that as the checks and balances kind of a application. So this was the intention of our integration into our workflow product. We're seeing a lot of traction of workflow in the water wastewater market in relation to how operators should respond to alarms, or we are also seeing a lot of traction of the workflow product in a manual batching kind of an environment, and there was a need of making sure that iFIX and workflow can interact with each other, with the operator being in his environment, which was the SCADA screen. So this kind of was our effort towards moving in that direction. The other aspect is related to charts. We introduced this chart object when we did iFIX 5.0, but we have done several enhancements to that chart object. The first feature is really introducing a thumbnail mode in for that chart object, so you can have a small thumbnail of a chart which basically updates as data comes in on your screen, and you can have multiple of these thumbnails on your screen. There are customers, especially infrastructure customers, who have their facilities over a wide geographic area that put these thumbnails on a geographic overview, and basically operators look at that and use that as a navigation tool in case they see the trends not going the right way. So that's one aspect that we introduced. Now, one of the special things about this thumbnail is the fact that once you put the chart into a thumbnail mode, based on the size of the thumbnail that you put on your graphic, it will go and access only that much amount of data, or that many samples for that pen, and put it on your chart. So it's a lot more efficient than having a full-fledged chart being compressed into a small screen size. This is the thumbnail mode really cleans up all your chart object. It just shows you the data legend, and it shows you the title of the chart, and from a data access standpoint, it basically, if you have a 50-pixel thumbnail, it just goes and gets 50 samples that can be plotted onto your screen. So that's kind of an enhancement. And I wanted to quickly go into iFIX to show you some of the aspects of what happens in the thumbnail mode. So let me move into the iFIX environment. So one of the aspects of the new chart object that we introduced is what we call as a quick configure mode. So when you go into the when you put the chart object onto a screen and you go into specify certain default configurations, you can enable this quick configure mode. And as I go into run mode, you'll realize what it does. So if I put this into my run mode, the first thing that you would observe on the thumbnail is that it takes away all of the remaining legend, and it just puts the value of the pen or values of different pens that are being plotted. Now, if I enable the quick configure mode, as I move the mouse on the chart, it comes up with this option automatically. It's part of the chart object, so there's no additional scripting that is written, but it comes up with this option on the right-hand side of your chart, and when you click on it, it basically goes into a full view of the chart. So it takes that thumbnail mode and basically explodes it into a bigger view. And as it goes into the bigger view, it now shows you the entire legend of that particular pen that is being plotted. Or if you have a legend over here, it basically shows you. And this is one way you can display the tooltip. As you move the cursor here, it changes the value here. The other aspect is when in a full mode, again, when you move your mouse here, it comes up with a contract one, and then in runtime mode, you can go back to your thumbnail property. So an operator, while he is in the thumbnail mode, can flip between, or when he is in the runtime mode, can flip between a thumbnail and a regular chart object. Now, the other aspect out here, as you saw, the legend, I can change my time cursor to actually show tooltips instead of a table. So when I do that, what it does, even for when I expand this, as my time cursor moves, it shows you the legend there itself, and it doesn't show you a table that is going over here. So I can choose that option here. So that's one feature that we enabled, and you can. There are customers who have more than 50 to 75 of these thumbnails on a chart. These are basically users who sit on top of operators and look at their operations more from a historical standpoint than a real-time standpoint. They're mainly either analysts or people who do billing or other users, and they have these multiple thumbnails and basically navigate using these chart objects to go to different areas in their operations. So that is one aspect that we added to our new chart object. Now, going into the next feature, what we introduced is also the ability to now auto-generate or duplicate charts on the fly. Now, this particular feature does require some scripting, but what iFIX now allows you to do is, as far as the operator is concerned, while he is in the run mode, he can actually generate newer charts on the fly by using the template of the chart that he's seeing, and he can replace the pens as he's trying to analyze a particular situation deeper and deeper. So he could start from an alarm summary screen, generate a chart of the alarm summary screen based on what alarm he wants to see, or based on the tag that he wants to see that generated that alarm. And if that tag had any relation to any upstream or downstream data, he can now use the time duration of that chart, or he can use the configuration of that particular chart as a template and generate a newer chart with a newer pen in it. So he can do that analysis as he goes. So that's from a demo standpoint. I just have a demo that shows you how it basically duplicates and lays out. Let me see. So I have two objects here. One is a build chart. So what it does is, when I click on the build chart, it takes a snapshot of the configuration of this chart and puts newer pens onto this chart. And then there is a duplicate chart option available as well, which basically just takes the snapshot and makes copies of these charts, where now you can it uses the same pens, but you can later on change the pen. So when I say build chart, it just makes a snapshot of this chart and then lays out the chart for you. So this is, again, I'm in run mode. I don't have to go into the configure mode when I do that. For an operator, if he wants any special kind of charts that he wants to generate based on a particular situation that he wants to study, he doesn't have to go into run mode or call the engineer to say, I need another chart that shows me this information. He can do that while he is in run mode as well. Now, you can't save it, or to save the chart graphic, there's certain advanced scripting that you need to do on from a workspace standpoint. But as far as the operator is concerned, he can basically initiate this as and when he wants on demand as he is looking at his information. So, usually with most water customers, you find, the morning shift operators have a different way that they operate their water distribution system, or, you'll have the afternoon shift operators have a completely different set of priorities and a different way they look at their system, and the night shift guys have a completely different way as well. So they can basically now kind of personalize how they want to look at and generate it as they. Now this still keeps the original application as is. This is basically just created on the fly, and he goes into that information. Now if I reset it, it basically goes back. Now I can duplicate the chart, which does the same thing, but it takes the same pens that are being plotted on the first chart, and it makes a copy and generates these over here. So those are two options now that we have added to the chart object that you can utilize with the new chart object. The other aspect that we added to the new charts is the ability to stack y-axes. So if you have like this chart object that we just saw, if you have multiple pens on a single chart, and at some point if the chart gets very noisy and you want to divide that chart into individual pens so that you can get a better view of how those charts are stacking up. Now on the fly, the operator can choose to stack the y-axis. So it takes each pen and creates its own chart. It divides that particular trend object into the number of pens it has and creates individual charts for those pens. The other aspect here is if you use the area mode of the chart rather than the line mode, and if you are interested in doing overlays of pens, and this could be the same tag for different time references. Now, in an overlay mode, you have to have the time duration of the chart to be exactly the same. So if you're looking at a 24-hour chart, you can have the same tag that does 24 hours starting now to yesterday, and the same tag that does from yesterday to the day before, and you can overlay that. Now, in an advanced graphics mode, if you use the area plot, it will actually show shadows of the area that is behind the primary area that you're seeing. So it will actually do an overlay of what is being tracked right now versus what was the situation yesterday. So that it allows you to do that as well with the chart object. Now for the stacking, I would like to show similar to the expand and contract capability that I showed with the thumbnail. What happens with let me see. What happens with this chart object as well is, as you get this expand option on the right hand side, on the left hand side you get the y-axis mode. So you can now, again, this is part of the chart object. It's not something that I've scripted in. This becomes available when you go and click the quick configure mode. So when I say I want to stack it, it basically divides my chart now into two chart objects. Since I had 2 pens, if I had 6 pens on that, it would have divided it into 6 pens. And then each one is getting plotted based on what its own EGU was. And then as you move your time cursor, the time cursor is applied across the object, so you see what the information was. But at least it declutters your trend object if the operator wants to study it in more detail and doesn't want all pens being confusing the information that he's seeing. So that's one ability that the new chart object now supports. So going into the developer productivity aspect of iFIX 5.5, what we did was, the first capability that we enabled in iFIX 5.5 was the ability to now host .NET or WPF or WinForms objects into an iFIX graphic. So this is earlier, prior to 5.5, anyone who had a .NET object or he had developed a WPF object had to do further work in going and wrapping that object up into ActiveX. Now with 5.5, you can natively go browse your WPF or your .NET object and put it into the iFIX graphic that you are developing, and it basically works the same way and in the same platform as what your other graphical elements exist. So if you have used your iFIX Dynamos, created a graphic, and there's a special .NET object that you have created that gives you information, some more efficiency information or some more information related to some analysis that you have done, you can put that object next to it without having to now do further work of wrapping it into an ActiveX. Now, if that object does support, if you have exposed any of the animations or scripts or any properties and methods as part of the development of that component, it will behave the same way as any iFIX Dynamo does. So when you do a right click and go to animations, whatever properties are exposed will be available as part of the animation dialog, and you can interface with that object as well. So let me see, I had actually downloaded an object library. So what happens in iFIX 5.5 is when you go to the insert object and objects and links, you have this traditional ActiveX OLE object over here, which allows you to drop in any ActiveX objects. But there's a new .NET component option now part of iFIX 5.5. So when you click on it, it comes up with your .NET component browser. Now I had downloaded some industrial gadgets from Software Toolbox. They had some .NET objects that were there from a sample perspective. Now all I did was I downloaded those objects and registered them or I installed them on the same node as where my iFIX was. And when I went to the .NET component browser and I said add components, it goes and looks for that particular DLL that registers it, and then it does the registration for you. So you can, if I go and pick saying I want this particular object, then it goes and finds out what all objects are part of that DLL and lets you choose which one you want to specify. So I've chosen a meter, so I'll just take a meter and drop it. So it basically drops it in the same graphic that I had this chart object on. Now if I go to the animations window, it says there's the position and the scale, or when I go to the advanced animation, it lets me say I can basically go and assign a value to it, and I'll just assign. And let me see if this kind of changes its. I don't know. I'll just use a tag that has a 0 to 100 here, so we can see the scale. And as I go here, it should animate it based on the value. Okay, let me see what is happening. But the idea here is that it allows you to go in and sorry about that. So let me do this. I think that should do stuff. Okay. So it basically now you can take any .NET object, put it next to your graphic, and just animate it the way you would animate any other Dynamo. So you now have the capability to use some of the advanced objects into iFIX graphics as well. So now, in addition to just doing native iFIX graphics objects and ActiveX, you now have the capability to also host in some advanced objects as well. So it becomes a universal kind of a component browser if you choose to put in objects there. So moving along, the other aspect that we did in iFIX 5.5 was bring in the water solutions pack and the OEM solutions pack as a default part of iFIX. So you now have all of your water industry dynamos as part of iFIX. When you install iFIX 5.5, it is part of the dynamo sets. You would have the OMAC compliant dynamo sets there, so you have the OMAC state model. You have certain pre-built screens that get installed as well, which are geared towards a packaging operation with a chart object, and these screens were pre-canned to accept OMAC compliant resistors from different PLCs. So if you use a PLC that has a configuration as per the PACML standard, you can tie it into these graphics, and these graphics have been pre-canned from an animation perspective to accept PACML states and animate themselves. So that's already part of iFIX 5.5. It's a default part of it. The other two capabilities that we also added in iFIX 5.5 was what we call as the historian data entry wizard and a data export wizard. So with historian data entry, you can actually do manual data entry directly into historian using a timestamp and a value. So any lab data that you want to enter or any manual data that an operator might have collected across his plant, he can at his leisure go in, enter the value using the timestamp of the value recorded, and it goes right into historian at the timestamp that the operator or the supervisor might have specified. So you can basically fill the historian archive at the timestamp that you want, so that it allows that manual data entry capabilities as well. So that those wizards are also part of the iFIX 5.5 dynamo sets. Going into information mobility, the key aspect, first and foremost, web space with 5.5 supports 64-bit OS. So now you can have web space running on a 64-bit server, both Windows 7 as well as 2008. So that's one ability that we missed when iFIX 5.1 supported 64. Now 5.5, you have that capability there. Again, the web space with iFIX 5.5 only supports Windows 7 64-bit. As far as 2008 is concerned, you can use 32 or 64. But from a Windows 7 perspective, it only supports running the server side only supports running on a 64-bit OS. On the client side, you can have a 32-bit or a 64-bit OS that you run Windows 7 on, but from a server standpoint, you have to have the server on a 64-bit OS. Other than that, we still support XP. So if you continue to use XP, you can still use WebSpace 5.5. That's not a problem. So it's not that WebSpace 5.5 only runs on 64-bit. You can use XP as well. The key functions of WebSpace with iFIX 5.5 is the capability to run as a non-embedded mode. So one of the major feedback that we got with customers who use WebSpace was that it ran embedded within a browser. So customers who were using it more as another runtime client for iFIX had to deal with all of the IE environment or the Firefox environment around the embedded iFIX screen that was running on through WebSpace. Now with the non-embedded mode, you'll have your WebSpace workspace cover your entire desktop. So you will not see any browser environment around it. In fact, if you use that graphic and you initiate Excel through an iFIX graphic, Excel will also start up as if it's running on your desktop, as if it was an application on your desktop. Although it is a web session that Excel would be running in, but it will run as if it's a non-embedded environment. So you can pretty much fill up the desktop from that standpoint. Now, again, WebSpace, you don't require anything to be installed on the client side. It basically takes the session that's running on the server side, but now it's in a non-embedded mode. The other aspect is now support for an iPad native app. So WebSpace can use the iPad native app, and the same screen that you were seeing through the browser or through this non-embedded mode, you can see the same screen on an iPad as well. Currently, there's an app on iTunes called Go Global. If you download that and connect to your web space 5.5 server, you will be able to execute your iFIX client on that. In a couple of weeks, we'll have a Prophecy SCADA app on iTunes. When you go to iTunes and search for Prophecy SCADA, it will come up with an app that you can download on your iPad and connect to the web space server. The app is at no cost on iTunes. It basically consumes a CAL that you will have on the web space server. So again, since web space works in a concurrent licensing environment, if you use that CAL to run an iPad client, obviously you'll have one less client that you will be running somewhere else. But that's more of how you manage your concurrent client connections. So that's one important aspect of web space with 5.5. The other is support for a relay server, or you can say a proxy server that allows you to scale the number of clients and also have all these clients ping just one URL. So if you have a large number of clients, if you want to run 100 clients, 100 web space clients for the same application of iFIX that's running in your plant, you can have a proxy server that looks at either individual dependent servers, or they could be VM images of dependent servers that now connect into this web space relay server. And all clients can hit this one URL of the relay server, and the relay server does session balancing between your dependent servers. So that is possible now with 5.5. So you can set it up and use it in that format. Now, one of the important aspects for 5.5 and our focus on quality that we have on iFIX, some part of it was released with 5.5, some part of it will be released as a service pack in a couple of months now. It's an ongoing effort around iFIX. The two main aspects that we focused on as part of the 5.5 release was, one was the whole network performance between the SCADA and the client. So we in fact redesigned the TCP task the way it used to work earlier. There was a cap that the TCP task reached in terms of how many network transactions it could handle, and it used to cap out at about 700 network transactions a second or a minute. And what that meant was any customers who had a heavy application in terms of alarms, or a heavy application in terms of number of clients, or number of animations and refreshes that were happening on the clients that required the SCADA to keep on serving the clients, used to find out that either they faced client dropouts, or they faced that the alarms used to come a lot slower, or the whole performance used to go down as they added clients. Now with the new TCP task, what we have seen is the ability for the TCP task to handle network transactions has gone up. We have tested it to go almost to about 2,200, 2,500 transactions. What that has improved is really the network throughput of the SCADA. So the number of alarms, or the speed at which the SCADA now processes the alarm and the data queue to the client has really improved, and we've seen a tremendous benefit in terms of how the whole network is serviced. So that's one big improvement that we have seen as part of this initiative. The other is really the client behavior in the new iFIX enhanced failover environment. We just had a lot of complaints around clients flip-flopping between SCADAs, or clients being stuck on a particular SCADA when you go to a maintenance mode, or when the servers fail over. And what we did was we just looked at the systemic problem that it was causing, and the first one was definitely the fact that the fact that we forced dynamic connections to be used was one of the key elements that was causing this problem. So we designed the client behavior to go away from the dynamic connections. What we basically did was, rather than having the way we designed it in 5.0, where the SCADAs had control of pulling the clients towards itself when it became active, we handed that control back to the clients and said the clients get to decide which is the active SCADA and go connect to it. By doing that, what we found was the behavior of the clients now is a lot more reliable. We saw that the clients accurately follow the active SCADA. When it goes into maintenance mode, it follows the standby SCADA, which becomes active once you get to maintenance mode. But we have seen a highly reliable behavior of clients now moving across that. We have not seen flip-flops of clients, and the key aspect of both the TCP task and the fix we have done on the client behavior is before we released iFIX 5.5, we had certain customers who were acutely feeling these problems do a pilot for us on the code that we gave them before we released 5.5, and we have seen and these customers ran it for us for a month or so on their environments, and they saw a drastic improvement in performance in terms of how their clients behaved or how their network behaved, and that's when we said yes, it's good to go, and we put it in the product and released it as part of 5.5. So those are two benefits that now customers definitely can entail as part of the 5.5 release. The other aspect is really supporting 4.5, Historian 4.5, and Historian 4.5 came out with support for 10 million tags for a single Historian server. We had to do some work in our expression builder to make sure that if someone does have that high attack count on a single server, when the expression builder makes a connection, it shows you a significant amount of tags that someone can browse from. We also modified the expression builder as it relates to Historian to add more filters or add more add an option where you can define a count of how many maximum tags it will show you in one browse. So it becomes a lot easier to go through and choose a pen for that. So that's some benefit that we have done there. The other thing that is part of iFIX 5.5 now is the IGS basic driver is now part of every iFIX SCADA license. So any apart from the iFIX 75 tag count package, which includes an IGS 75 points, all of the iFIX SCADA packages will include IGS basic on it. And what that means is the IGS basic includes about 70 plus basic protocols that come with it. Most of the standard PLC and device protocols are part of the IGS basic ones. Only some of the premium ones like the DNP3 or BACnet or SNMP are not part of the IGS basic. But what you get when you buy iFIX an iFIX SCADA license is all of your Allen Bradley protocols, your Siemens protocols, Modbus protocols. It's all included with your iFIX license now. So that's another change that we have done as part of the iFIX 5.5 license. And quickly getting into some of the VOC updates. One is on our analog alarm and our digital alarm blocks. We modified the way it treats the contact tag names. So if you use analog alarms and digital alarms, and your contact tag name is actually a bit in the PLC where it also informs the PLC of alarm acknowledgements, then what we have done is that particular field, when an iFIX database starts up, is synced with the PLC register that you see. Or if there is a COM failure between iFIX and the PLC and it comes back up, before anything being written out, it is first synced. So what that has led to a change in behavior of our analog and our digital output. So there is a checkbox that we have introduced in analog and digital output that prevents the AO and the DO to write out in case the block is reset, which means if you reload the database or iFIX starts over, you can prevent the analog and digital outputs to write out to the PLC and force a read first to make sure that they are synchronized. So that's something that we've added to AOs and DOs. What is part of the analog alarm and the digital alarm is now you have individual block COM alarm suppression for these two tags. I mean, and one of the reasons we chose these two tags are these are the most used tags in terms of how customers do alarm management, and those are the two tags where we have enabled individual COM alarm suppression. You still have the ability to suppress COM alarms on an overall iFIX application perspective, but if you choose these specific blocks, they supersede the one that you specify in your SAC task. The other VOCs that we put in is support for Office 2010 and the capability to have a native ODBC driver into SQL 2010. What we found out was the native SQL driver, the structure of the timestamp in SQL 2010 is slightly different than the previous versions of SQL, and if you use the native SQL driver, it kind of broke your alarm ODBC, or it broke any of your VisiConnects or any alarm timestamp queries that you did on SQL 2010. So we made some changes to the way it parses that timestamp, and now you can use the SQL native driver as well with that. So those are some of the VOC functions that we put into iFIX 5.5. So I think that was my last slide, and I think I can open it up for questions.
Okay. Everyone, if you have questions, like I said earlier, you can just type them into the box on the right side of your screen. All right. Looks like we don't have any questions.
Okay.
Oh, wait. Nope, we just got one. How difficult is it to upgrade from 4.5 to 5.5?
So from an application standpoint, your graphics or your database, it's pretty easy. There are no significant changes from a database structure or your graphic structure, so that should be an easy upgrade for you. What you need to watch for is the change in the failover that iFIX 4.5 supported versus what iFIX 5X versions support. So in iFIX 4.5 we had both SCADAs active, and the only thing that synchronized between the two was the alarm acknowledgement piece. In iFIX 5X and ideally iFIX 5.5, since you would upgrade to iFIX 5.5, has a more traditional active standby concept on the SCADA. So I think that is something that you will have to watch out for. I mean, depending on how your application is structured, it's quite possible you may not have to do any changes there. But I know customers who had written specific scripts around the way 4.5 failover worked, and you'll have to watch out for that that behavior of the SCADAs.
Okay, we have a bunch of other questions that have come in. I'm going to start with one that is similar to the one you just answered. How much trouble is it to upgrade from 3.5 to 5.5?
Same thing, 3.5 to 5.5. Again, from an graphics or an application perspective, I don't think there is anything significant that we changed from 3.5 to 5.5. Again, 3.5, similar to 4.5, used the old failover method, which was more acknowledged failover. So if you are using failover, that's something that you will have to watch out for. That will change on your SCADA side. That the SCADAs will go into an active standby mode. So I'm sure some Hayes or someone from Advantage can walk you through what those changes would be. Okay.
And again, an upgrading question. Does an upgrade from 5.0 to 5.5 require iFIX to be uninstalled and reinstalled, or is it more of an on-the-fly upgrade?
Well, it does not require iFIX to be uninstalled. You can pretty much go and upgrade iFIX 5.0 to 5.5, but it's not an. I mean, when you say on the fly, it still requires iFIX to be shut down. iFIX needs to be down when you perform the upgrade, but it's not an uninstall and install issue.
Okay.
Hey, Carrie?
Yes, this is Steve Smith. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Hey, something to clarify for those people that are doing the upgrades. The pathing, there was a pathing change. They went from short install paths that existed in the old versions of iFIX to a different install path. So when upgrading older versions, if it was C Dynamics or C GE FANUC program files or whatever it was, the default install path for 5.5 is different on a clean install. So you need to take that into account whether or not you're upgrading and leaving your install path the same or doing a new install path.
Hmm.
Right, and to Steve's point, I mean, I think Steve brought up a good point. If you install on the same machine, which means you basically just upgrade it on the same machine, it will take the path that you have been using. But if you do a clean install, yes, and especially if you have anything external that looks for that particular path, then that will change. Yes, that's a good point.
Are there other tablets supported?
Right now we are working on an Android client. In fact, we have a beta in-house. We will probably have support for Android, and this is any Android tablet that will run the, I believe the OS version is 4.0 and up.
Mm-hmm.
Right now we are testing it on the Motorola Zoom and the Samsung Galaxy, but it pretty much just any Android device that will